So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, Jeff Okudah has been a controversial subject in Detroit, right? Since the day he was drafted, it was a controversial pick. Some people really liked the player, and some people were not so high on the cornerback from Ohio State. And that really hasn't changed in Jeff Okudah's 3 years in Detroit. He's had injury concerns. He's had some up and down play over the past couple of years, and fans really can't decide whether they want Jeff Okudah to stay or whether they think the Lions should cut their losses and move on. But regardless, the Lions have a decision to make this offseason. Are they going to extend Jeff Okudah and give him his first-round fifth-year option, or are they going to let that contract expire and potentially let Jeff Okudah move on to a different NFL organization? Well, the numbers came out for that today as far as fifth-year options for the class of 2019, and the numbers might change some perspectives. So today, that is what we are going to take a look at. Now, Jeff Okudah's fifth-year option would cost the Detroit Lions $11 million and a little bit more, right? $11,514,000 for the 2024 season. And as it says, there's a few important factors to consider, mostly that the Detroit Lions would be paying Jeff Okudah his fifth-year option entirely in base salary. Now, it is a fully guaranteed $11.5 million. However, if he were to be traded, that money would not cause any dead cap to the Detroit Lions because it is guaranteed in base salary and not in signing bonus. A similar thing happened with TJ Hockenson this year, as the fifth-year option was picked up for TJ Hockenson and he was traded to the Minnesota Vikings, in turn taking the entirety of that contract off of the Detroit Lions' hands, as they did not have to pay a cent to TJ Hockenson after the trade was made. Now, taking a look at the Detroit Lions salary cap, as of right now, the Detroit Lions are paying Jeff Okudah a decent amount already, right? He is the seventh highest paid player as far as base salary on the Detroit Lions active roster as of today, being paid this past season over $10 million to be the cornerback one for the Detroit Lions. Now, a lot of people are going to argue that he is not playing worthy of $10 million. People are going to argue that he has not played up to the standard of the number 3 overall pick, nor does he deserve necessarily that large of a contract for the play that we have been given. However, that does mean that if the Lions are to pick up Jeff Okudah's fifth-year option, it is very similar to what they are paying him now on his rookie contract, and that rookie contract really is going to just be extended an extra year, whereas a lot of positions or if certain players have made the Pro Bowl, that number would be significantly larger. As of right now, if they were to re-sign Jeff Okudah for a fifth-year option, his contract really would not change, and his contract would pretty much stay right where it's at as of right now, just adding $1 million onto what's already being paid to the fourth-year cornerback. Now, taking a look at Jeff Okudah's play, I think this is a big reason why a lot of people don't want Jeff Okudah to be extended and why they're not super excited for the fifth-year option of the third-year cornerback. Now, Jeff Okudah, of course, started his rookie year with an injury, only ended up playing 9 games and starting in 6 of those. He did have an interception in his second ever start and did have 2 passes defended while showing the ability to play physical football as a defender, but really struggled deep down the field in coverage and really struggled to keep a lot of wide receivers off the stat sheet, right? He didn't come in and become that dominant cornerback one like everybody expected him to be out of Ohio State. Now, going into 2021, the coaching regime changed, the defensive coordinators changed, the positional coaches changed, and a lot of people were expecting Jeff Okudah to have a big bounce back year in his second season and become that dominant corner from Ohio State. He only ended up playing about 30 snaps on the 2021 season, only playing in 1 game, only having one pass defended, and I believe allowing 2 catches on 3 targets for just over. He had that one big catch to Deebo Samuel, but that wasn't entirely his fault. And then he gave up a very short route as well. So not a horrible first game by Jeff Okudah under Aaron Glenn, but certainly not this dominant force. Now, coming into 2022, Jeff Okudah had this weight on his shoulders, right? He had this chip on his shoulder of having to come out and be this top cornerback. And Jeff Okudah played very well, I thought. He played in 15 games and started 15 games for the Detroit Lions, and he did not play very bad, right? One interception, which he took back to the house for a touchdown, and a game-changing touchdown, mind you, against the Chicago Bears, having 7 passes defended as well as a forced fumble, while totaling 73 tackles and 2 tackles for loss on the season. Now, looking at some of Jeff Okudah's advanced statistics, this year he was targeted 77 times for 46 completions, having a 59.7 completion percentage against him, allowing 681 yards, which isn't super great, but allowing just 1 touchdown on the year, which isn't very bad. Now, Jeff Okudah, I think it's a lot of hate for a few different plays, right? Obviously, some of them stand out. The big play, the big passing play against Carolina that really helped seal the deal versus the Detroit Lions. He struggled on a couple balls in New York versus the New York Giants, and he really didn't have the greatest season, right? But he didn't have a bad year. He started off incredibly hot. And in fact, if we go to the game logs of Jeff Okudah, the advanced game log is even better. You can see that he did struggle in a few games. However, he did play really well in a lot of games, right? He opened up week 1 playing probably his best football, being targeted 6 times, allowing just 2 completions, 33%, 21 yards, 0 touchdowns. Week 2 versus the Washington Commanders, right? Gave up 4 of 6 targets, but only allowed 39 yards. Against Minnesota, he held Justin Jefferson to just 3 catches for 14 yards while being targeted 8 times. And yes, he did give up 6 completions, 75%, but played very physical, was a big part of the run game, and only allowed 48 yards total in that game. These first 3 games are top level play. These first 3 games are incredible and show exactly what Jeff Okudah can be in the NFL. Now, he did struggle against the Seattle Seahawks, but really a large chunk of those yards, more than half of those yards, came on a big 55-yard catch to DK Metcalf, where Jeff Okudah heavily contested it, dove for a pass breakup, just didn't quite get his hand on the football, and about 30 to 40 of those yards came after the catch by DK Metcalf. Again, not a great game by Jeff Okudah, but I think that one catch really overshadows what he was going to do and how well he actually played, because in that game he didn't play poorly necessarily, but that one big play I think really overshadows. But he bounced back the next week, and although he didn't play the entire game, only allowed 44 yards to the New England Patriots, was definitely not the weakest part of that secondary. Then he came back versus Dallas and played what I thought was his absolute best game as a Detroit Lion. He had over 15 tackles, was targeted 5 times, 3 completions, allowed just 22 yards, but played so incredibly well in the run game. This is the game where Jeff Okudah played more as kind of a Sam linebacker, played more of a nickel defender role, kind of switch between those two. Didn't really play boundary cornerback all that much, but they placed him inside, they placed him around the box, and they let him go make physical plays in the run game while allowing him to play more physical in pass coverage, right? Not having him cover for 20, 30 yards down the field. And that really helped Jeff Okudah play to his strengths. And again, I think this Dallas game was easily his best performance on the year. Then he bounced back versus Miami, where again, he allowed just 1 completion, only was targeted 1 time, but allowed just 1 completion for 18 yards against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Now, he did struggle again versus the Green Bay Packers, where he did allow a perfect passer rating, allowed 5 completions of 6 targets for 121 yards, and allowed the only touchdown of the season by himself, right? That was not a good game, but everybody struggles. So going into week 10 or going into week 9 even, Jeff Okudah is playing at a relatively elite level. I mean, 21 yards, 39, 48, 44, 22, 18. Yes, you have the 112, the 135. Those are more outliers, though, at this point than anything. Then you go into Chicago, where he allowed 0 completions for 0 yards and had an interception. You go into the Giants, where he starts yet again. He has just 1 completion, for 7 yards allowed. He goes into Jacksonville, is targeted 8 times for just 2 completions for 13 yards. And then Minnesota, again, Justin Jefferson had a great day. Jeff Okudah also had a very good day, allowing just 23 yards on 3 attempts. Now, he did leave this game early with an injury, left right about the first quarter. So this was kind of on pace to be one of his not so good games. But at the same time, he also only allowed 23 yards in about a quarter and a half of play, and the entire secondary was being burnt by Justin Jefferson at the same time. So at the very least, he was the best of the worst in that game. And then this is where Jeff Okudah really gets a lot of heat, right? You get the New York Jets game where he gave up 105 yards, was targeted 13 times, but only allowed 5 completions against him. Did have the big one to Garrett Wilson, was kind of picked on at the end of that first half, but again, only allowing 38% completion percentage is not a bad thing for a cornerback. And then he goes into Carolina and he doesn't play very well, right? 3 completions, 78 yards, not a very good game, but did not allow a touchdown. And then, of course, he played very sparingly versus the Chicago Bears in his season finale, allowing 1 catch for 1 target in just 16 yards. I believe he only played about 20 snaps in that game, so only about a third of the defensive snaps before he was taken off the field. So, yes, you can look at Jeff Okudah and say he allowed let's just say 60% completion percentage, because that's pretty much what it was, roughly 700 yards and 1 touchdown on the year. Now, he only played in 15 games. He did miss 2. However, if you really want to compare Jeff Okudah statistically to some of the other cornerbacks in the NFL, then we can go ahead and do that. Right, let's take a look at Jalen Ramsey, somebody who is widely regarded as a potential number 1 cornerback in football and undisputedly a top 5 cornerback in football. In 2021, his all-pro season, he allowed a roughly same percentage of completions, roughly the same amount of yardage, while giving up 2 more touchdowns than Jeff Okudah. And again, this year gave up a significantly higher completion percentage, gave up roughly the same amount of yards, about 600, and again, 5 touchdowns through the air. So, and again, there is the argument that, yeah, they played 2 more games and everything like that, but it goes to show you that Jeff Okudah is not this struggling cornerback in the NFL. And in fact, actually played incredibly well for a large portion of the season with, 4 of his 15 games or so really causing fans to turn on him. To Jalen Ramsey's game logs this year, the advanced game logs, you're going to see a lot of the same things, right? He started off the year really poorly versus Buffalo, but had a great game, had a decent game versus Arizona, had a great game versus San Francisco, a great game, not such a great game. He gave up 78 here, 75 here, 67 here, right? He gave up roughly almost exactly the same of what Jeff Okudah gave up, right? 62.6% to 59.7%. You have 681 yards, 659 yards, 5 touchdowns to 1 touchdown. And yes, obviously Jeff Okudah played 2 less games and a few less snaps, but at the end of the day, everybody looks at Jeff Okudah as if he's this cornerback that is incapable of playing coverage, that he's incapable of having production. And I just don't think that's true, right? Yes, there are outliers. There are bad games. There's, the Seattle game. There's the Green Bay game. And again, which in this game, he forced a fumble on a completion that should have been recovered, which would have led to him not allowing a touchdown the entire year. But again, he doesn't get credit because of the yardage and the big play. The New York Jets game, the Carolina Panther game. There are 4 bad games in this season that Jeff Okudah gets more hate for than all the other good games that he played this year. And I really just don't think that's fair. So when taking a look at Jeff Okudah and his 5th-year option and paying him $11.5 million, should the Detroit Lions do it? In my opinion, I think that they should. Jeff Okudah has been an up-and-down player, but he's shown steady improvement over his first 3 years. Jeff Okudah from 2022 from Jeff Okudah in 2019 are 2 very different players. Or Jeff Okudah in 2020, his rookie year, are very different players. Jeff Okudah is playing with more confidence. He's playing with more physicality. He's playing better in press. He, yes, on occasion gets beat deep, but I think that's why you kind of have to move Jeff Okudah around and let him play closer to the box where he was elite in week 6 versus the Dallas Cowboys. But that is a video for another day. So With that being said, should the Detroit Lions pick up Jeff Okudah's fifth-year option for $11.5 million, a $1 million pay bump from next year to 2024? I think it's a no-brainer. The Detroit Lions should extend Jeff Okudah. Jeff Okudah, like it or not, is the Lions' best secondary weapon that they have right now, or at least the best cornerback weapon that they have. They don't have very many other options, and to be quite honest, Jeff Okudah did not play as bad as most people are going to have you believe. So with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below, what would you do with Jeff Okudah's contract? Would you rehire or would you extend Jeff Okudah's contract so he could play again in the 2024 season for the Lions? Or would you let his contract expire and try to find somebody else as a younger talent in the draft? I'd be very curious to you guys think. With all that being said, though, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.